Well, I think filmmakers are pretty control freaky type people, and you can only control it so far. You know, pretty soon it is out there in the world, and you don't have any control over what people think of it or what its ultimate life is. So it's probably a healthy relationship to have, you know.
Slacker is a 1992 independent film set in Austin. Written, directed, and produced by famous filmmaker Richard Linklater with the help of the Austin Film Society, he created a movie set in the West Campus neighborhoods of Austin. It's a showcase of weirdos, freaks, and slackers. This story does not have a traditional narrative structure. The camera seems to follow whoever it wants, guiding us through the city, making a story based on proximity rather than actual events happening to a set of known characters. With a budget of $23,000, while this is Linklater's second feature film, it is his first to be shown in theaters nationwide. The movie was first shown in Austin, where it became a very hot topic. A lot of people who lived in the town had known it was being made or were featured in it and knew people that were featured in it. So it created a big buzz and was selling out the Dolby Theater. It was creating such a buzz that it eventually got to a producer by the name of John Pearson. Pearson had previously worked on many independent films and was famous for doing so. He produced She's Gotta Have It, Roger and Me, and later Chasing Amy. Slacker, since the early 90s, has shown us what independent cinema can do for the genre as a whole. What people who are passionate about making films can do if they have the ability to do it. How could it be that 30 years later, it's still relevant? And I think to talk about why this movie became an important figurehead for all of independent cinema, I think that it's important to talk about intention versus results. Every piece of art or media or anything that's created usually has an intention, a purpose. The artist, inventor, creator, or whoever will generally have a reason to create. Whether that's for fame, money, art, or just because they can, there's an intent behind creating.
I thought about it probably 5 years before I actually made the film. It was one of those early kind of radical ideas you have when you're just get into something. I was thinking, like, you know, you're trying to break out of everything that's come before. So I was just, why couldn't you? I remember I was driving to Houston. I was like, why can't you just make a film where it just goes from character to character, and that could be a whole film? You know, I was watching a lot of experimental films at the time.
It's clear that Linklater was interested in the structure of the film and was perhaps limited by budget and the inability to leave Austin or get talent outside of Austin. So he created the format to work for what he could and what he had in Austin. But what was the result? How was the fact that it's independent and it's on such a small budget relevant or even important and good for how the movie came out and the result and the impact it has 30 years later? I really wanted to capture this movie's relationship to Austin and what Austin looks like now and how that kind of tints what the movie means to not only people who are from Austin, but young filmmakers who generally won't have the budget, the means to do anything outside of independent for their first films. With the help of this article from the end of Austin, I was able to actually visit some of the places in the movie. For the first location, I decided to visit Mount Bonnell. Mount Bonnell is the last location in Slacker where they throw the camera off the cliff. As you can see in the footage, it's now more consumer-friendly, family-friendly, and less of just a trail and a dirt patch. But as you can see, it's clearly very different from what's in the movie. Now it is scenic. It's meant to be enjoyed. And so I feel like this is just one indicator of how Austin has changed. But we will be able to see that in more depth when we see what the West Campus neighborhood of Austin looks like now. The next location I decided to visit was the cafe featured in the movie. Well, first you see this church leading to the cafe where you enter and you see a bunch of college students. And I wanted to see what a cafe like that right across the street from UT looks like now. And as you can see, it's a vacant building now. What was in it before, the Captain Quackenbush's, is actually moved locations, and it used to house the Austin Film Society above it. As you can see, the church that was featured in the film is still standing, but the same cannot be said for the cafe. But what does Austin changing have to do with Slacker? And this is where I feel like the intention and results of filmmaking in general, and for this movie, clash. While Austin is still known as a place for Texans who are different to flock to, it's really become a shell of what it once was. With many tech companies and corporations flocking to Austin, it pushes out many local businesses, creating this contrast between vacant, empty buildings that look like they have no plan to be reused across the street from freshly painted Targets and newly established chain restaurants. The individuality of Austin is slowly slipping away from itself, leaving behind the weird and ushering in the new, the norm, the big city feel that Austin previously didn't have. Many people have noted that Austin is changing, gentrifying its old, poorer neighborhoods and creating a more profitable city. What I find most interesting about Slacker is that it couldn't have been made any other way. And it unintentionally showcases an Austin that doesn't exist anymore. And by doing it themselves, the film crew of Slacker, they've allowed us to witness an Austin that will never be again. When Linklater made this movie, he had no way of knowing that this would be true, that Austin would change so much, and that the film industry would become what it is. The reason independent films are so important is that they allow us to get a peek into some people's real lives. And especially in Slacker, it shows us a film that is much more personal and intimate than most other movies that will market to as many people as possible. And in Slacker's case, it was made by people who just wanted to create, no matter what happened to their creation.